Let's talk now to former MEP, Mr. Rupert Lowe. Rupert, very, very good evening to you. Welcome back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham after the shenanigans of the by-election business. What can you tell me? I mean, who would have been at all surprised by any of this, that the Home Office doesn't like being told it can't do its job, and also that the border force is completely and utterly useless when it comes to protecting our borders?
Well, Mike, as I've said to you in the past, I think legal and illegal immigration is now a national emergency. It's a crisis. And when net migration in 2022 is the equivalent of 2 cities the size of Bristol coming in, and I used that analogy when I stood in the Kingswood by-election, that is simply unacceptable, and it's forecast to continue at an unacceptable rate. Now, I mean, we've seen the post office submasters being mistreated by a state-owned entity, the post office. And it's of no surprise to me to see this apparently decent, upstanding ex-military civil servant who's doing his job clearly, and he's telling us the truth, and he's concerned about a potential loophole, further loophole, which is allowing people to come in illegally. Now, I have to say, I have flown on private jets on a number of occasions, and I have rarely had my passport inspected. I've often wondered how that can happen. But I was assured, or have been assured, that the roster of who's on the plane is given to immigration, and ultimately they have the right to come and inspect passports. But I've been to several different airports on at least 2 occasions with shotguns, and I've literally hopped off the plane, no passport, nobody to inspect my passport, and I've carried my guns to my car and driven home.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that David Neal is right. And particularly when I read that, that the Home Office can't actually produce the statistics that they're using to shoot down his argument, I think I'm inclined to accept his argument, given the incompetence of our border control, our general sort of approach to immigration, and the fact that it seems almost as if the sort of government is in cahoots with this globalist agenda for open borders and destruction of the nation state. So the British people voted to take back our nation state status in 2016. And I think Mr. Neal raises a very topical issue. So I'm encouraged that honest, decent people like him are coming forward and telling us the truth. Yeah. So it's extraordinary that James cleverly has sacked him. What's he got to gain from telling us the truth?
Well, it does
Nothing.
seem extraordinary, particularly in the method that he chose to do so. And I spoke to Kevin Saunders, who's a guest with us again tonight as well, before, former chief of the borders for us. And Kevin, you were very clear last time we spoke about this story that you didn't think that David Neal had got it right, because you said, there is a roster, it is always given over to whoever is checking the plane. And as I said to you, well, yeah, that's all very well, as long as the people on the plane match the people on the roster. And if you're not checking, you don't know exactly necessarily that the guy who says he's got such and such a passport is actually that guy. I mean, has any of this today changed your mind?
No, I'm sorry, it hasn't.
So you're saying David
exactly
Neal's got it wrong? You're saying he's got it wrong?
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Neal should not have leaked to the press.
That's a separate issue.
Well, yes, it is a separate issue, but we wouldn't be having this if he hadn't leaked the wrong information to the press, would we?
Well, I can only assume he has a good reason for leaking, and he may explain that in subsequent days to this. Maybe he decided that the Home Office were going to bury the report that he gave them, and he thought it was worth actually being published. And so there could be very good reasons why he's actually physically a whistleblower, and he's lost his job as a result. I'm not convinced that you're right and he's wrong.
Well, I'm sorry, Mike. Senior civil servants should not be going to the press without the authority of the politicians.
In every
That's
situation?
The rule.
In every situation?
Yeah, in every situation. We're employed by the government to do a job. And David Neal was leaving in March anyway. He could have held on. He didn't have to do what he did. His team were given wrong information, and that shouldn't have happened, but they were given wrong information. They were told the information was wrong, as I said in your programme last week. They were told the information was wrong, and yet for some reason they went with the wrong information. So one, they went to the press, which they shouldn't have done, and two, when they went to the press, they went with wrong information.
Okay.
So that's wrong.
Let me go back to Rupert Lowe. I mean, Rupert, I find it extraordinary that this sort of narrative is being. And I mean, I've got a lot of time for Kevin. I've got no reason to think he's not telling the truth, but I find it hard to believe.
I don't understand why he's confusing it with the rights and wrongs of leaking to the press. The key thing is here is Mr. Neal telling the truth, and that's I haven't heard him justify how he's not telling the truth.
Right.
And as I said just now, I don't understand what Mr. Neal has to gain from telling us the truth. He's now lost his job. And at the end of the day, unless I misunderstand it, the Home Office is saying they've lost the data that substantiates what they're saying versus what David Neal is saying. Right. So let's see the information that they say they've got that substantiates their case. But until we see it, Mike, I'm inclined to believe Mr. Neal rather than our own Home Office, I'm afraid.
And Kevin, I think that's a fair point, isn't it? Because if the Home Office could prove him wrong by producing this data, they would do so. But they can't, funnily enough, because they don't have it. You know, in addition to losing thousands of immigrants who've come to this country and they don't know where they are, they've now lost all their data. So why should we believe a word they say?
Mike, that's another thing. The Home Office have admitted in the past that they don't know the whereabouts of 17,500 people who are on the asylum seekers list.
Right.
They've admitted they don't know where they are. Well, that doesn't fill one with great confidence, does it?
No. Let me ask you again, Kevin. I mean, what has Mr. Neal got to gain by producing false data and false information and giving it to the press? What would he do that for, knowing that he was going to lose his job?
Well, I have no idea why he didn't go for the right information, which his team had been given. I have no idea at all.
But I mean, this is a guy who served his country, has worked in the Home Office he was appointed in 2021. He doesn't appear to have any kind of record of going rogue. He doesn't appear to have any record of telling mistruths. Why are you so sure that he's done it this time?
Well, I don't know what his reasons are. No doubt his reasons will come out when I assume he takes cleverly to court for being sacked. But I can only go back to what the information that I've been given, and I've been given it in writing, that the information that London City provided was wrong. When it was fact-checked by the people at Marsham Street, they found the faults. They apologised. They said, look, we've made a mistake. This data is incorrect. They provided the correct data, but for some reason, the report came out with the wrong data in it, and it shouldn't have done. Now, you can blame
the Home Office have lost all the data, so they can't prove it.
Pardon?
But now the Home Office have lost all that data, so they can't show it to us.
Well, I'm sure that they will be able to find the detail, because there is going to be emails whizzing around from senior managers. I mean, I know what happens when you get when the wrong data's given. You dig out the emails, you find out what's been said, who said it, where it was said, why it was said, where the information came from. So I am as sure as God made little apples that data could be found.
Well, that's a very interesting point to bring up. We're out of time. Rupert, one more thing from you. Go on.
Through the chair, can I ask Kevin quickly, so how is it that I can fly in on a private jet, land at Denham Airport with 2 shotguns, not show my passport and walk to my car and drive home? I mean, if I can do that, surely it's not beyond the wit of man to suggest that, as Kevin says, if the roster is incorrect, if there's nobody there to check it's incorrect, it can be happening, surely.
Yeah.
Right, Mr. Lowe.
So yes or no?
First of all, when you boarded that aircraft, information would have been passed to the United Kingdom. We would know you were on that plane, all right? Now,
but you know I was on it, but you wouldn't know weren't other people on it, though, would you?
Well, the authorities from where you took off from are responsible for supplying us with the information.
But what if they've been
and
bribed?
If they don't,
Kevin, what if they've been bribed? What if he's coming in from some war-torn country?
But then in that case, it's down to the pilot to pass
Right,
the
so there's a lot of holes in the
to-
system, it seems to me. Listen,
Yeah,
we'll have to
yeah,
do
of
this
course
some
there
more.
are.
Kevin, thank you
Yeah,
very much
but-
indeed.
but-
I admire your steadfast defence of the Home Office, which is completely useless in every other area. But thank you very much indeed. And Rupert, thank you to you as well.